Happy lunch hour, gang. Okay, have you voted yet? If you haven't, you're pretty soon going to be in the minority. I'll give you this. Early voting. Just how it's going so far. We already have about 35 million early votes that have been recorded as of Thursday. Okay, now we're in a Saturday. A lot of people have the opportunity because they're not at work to do it today. That's 10% of the U.S. population. That's nearly 20% of the U.S. electorate. I mean, people that are registered to vote or even eligible to vote. Obviously, your 5-year-old can't vote. Now, not all places have early voting, okay? Alabama, there is no early voting at all statewide. Take Idaho, there's certain counties that there's no early voting. Some counties in some states, like Florida, early voting starts today, or maybe it was yesterday, okay? So not even everybody is eligible to vote. Then, of course, you have states that are only mail-in voting. So, those don't count either. But it brings up the question, and this kind of got answered yesterday, but there's a whole lot of bad information, go figure, out there on what came down yesterday. Now, if you were paying attention at all to states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, funny how they're all swing states, even Maricopa County in Arizona, swing state. Gee, we're not going to be able to count all the ballots on election day. We need 10 days, 2 weeks after the election to count all the ballots. Doesn't work that way. Okay. Why are they doing this? Well, I'm going to give you my theory on this, and I'm going to tell you what happened legally. You know how when you go to the convention, let's say the Republican convention, they go alphabetically by state to, Alabama gives all its electoral votes to Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee, or Arkansas gives all their Democrat electoral votes for Kamala Harris to be the nominee. And then when they got to California for Kamala Harris or Florida for Donald Trump, they got skipped, right? And then when mathematically it comes up that California would have the votes to put Kamala Harris over the top, or Florida had the votes to put Donald Trump over the top, then the state gets called, right? That's how they do it in the nomination process, in the conventions. What are the odds that Arizona or Michigan or Florida or Georgia are trying to cover up something, or maybe want to be the kingmaker or queenmaker, if you will? Well, it's 260 votes apiece. And Pennsylvania, we're finally ready. We've got our count in. We're giving it to insert candidate name here. And they come up, they're the kingmaker or queenmaker. And then they go, well, we're the ones that put you over the top, Mr. or Mrs. President. You need to help us a little bit more. It's a possibility, okay? The other possibility is that these states want to be able to hide, kind of like a congressman will. That bill has enough votes to pass, and even though I'm for it, it'll look bad for my constituents, so now I can vote against it because it's already passed, right? Same thing. They all have the ability to hide their corruption in the elections. That's what they're thinking. Oh, we don't have to worry about shipping in suitcases full of ballots this time because some other state already put my candidate over the top, right? Okay. This is the corruption. This is the crap that goes on. This is why we have lawfare in the elections. I mean, both sides have said they've hired thousands of lawyers to contest the election. We've heard all the stories about Kamala Harris won't certify, the Congress won't certify Donald Trump as the winner, yada, 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 all this sort of stuff. It's pretty bad when the elected representatives we have in our country will not abide by the laws in our country. And this goes not only for congressmen, both parties, but secretaries of state, both parties, who are trying to game the system, right? Well, you had an interesting case that came up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals yesterday, Fifth District Court of Appeals, I'm sorry. Now, the Fifth District covers Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. There's no real big concern that Trump is going to lose any of those states. Kamala Harris may think that she has a chance in Texas, but she has about as much chance of winning Texas as I do of giving birth. Okay. Yes, I'm a man. I know the definition between the two. So it got brought up to the appeals court after a lower court said that the states could have up to a week or so after Election Day to receive ballots. And of course, this went to court. Well, the Fifth Circuit Court made their ruling yesterday. I want you to read this. Read it with me. Congress statutorily designated a singular day for the election of members of Congress and the appointment of presidential electors. Remember, you're not voting directly for a president. You're voting for whoever gives the electoral vote. Text, precedent, and historical practice confirm this day for the election is the day by which ballots must both be cast by voters and received by state officials. Because Mississippi's statute allows ballot receipt up to 5 days after federal election day, it is preempted by federal law. We reverse the district court's contrary judgment and remand for further proceedings. So basically what the appeals court has said here is that no, unless the ballots are received by November 5th, they don't count. That doesn't mean you can go to the post office at 11 o'clock at night, like you do with your IRS, tax returns, and drop it in the mailbox, and as long as the post office postmarks it by midnight, your ballot counts. No, unless it's there to be counted by midnight, it's not a valid ballot. Okay? So you had a whole bunch of people yesterday celebrating all over the place. This is it. They can no longer do this. They have to have the ballots. No, sorry. That's misinformation for two reasons. First off, the Fifth District Court Fifth Appeals Court, whole 9 yards here, okay, only pertains to Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, not the other 47 states. Granted, there is precedence, so this ruling has no effect whatsoever on Arizona, on Georgia, on Pennsylvania, on Michigan to do anything. Okay? If you look at the last sentence of the decision that I just wrote, or just read to you, we reverse the district court's contrary judgment and remand for further proceedings, which means they kicked it back to the lower court to relitigate, rehear the argument. Now, the appeals court has already said, come back and say, no, they can't do it. Otherwise, we're just going to overturn you again. Which, all that's going to happen is this is going to keep on going past Election Day. I mean, mind you, we're only 9 days out, guys. Okay. So this ruling has to move quickly. It's now kicked back down to district court, which will eventually be taken to the appeals court. But you're also going to have those secretaries of state who see the writing on the wall, and they're going to appeal the appellate decision and want to get this to the Supreme Court. Does the Supreme Court pick it up? Here's the next caveat. Whether you know or don't know, each one of the justices is the one who oversees a certain district court, first court, ninth court, fifth court, whatever. Guess who oversees the 5th District Court? That would be Chief Justice John Roberts. And people could say, gee, that's a good thing. Roberts would vote along the conservative bent. Until you look back at Obamacare, and Roberts was the tie-breaking vote that said, no, Obamacare can go forward. Remember, that was a 5-4 decision, and the Chief Justice was the one that gave us the debacle that is the ACA. Don't count on it. When I watch all these people on social media hooting and hollering, going, look, we won. You didn't win squat yet. Okay? This is where we get into it. We go back to what I said at the beginning. How are they going to do this? Do they want to be king or queen maker? Do they want to cover their tracks for the cheating? Do they want to know, gee, on election day, this candidate or that candidate's behind 200,000 votes. We've got 10 days to come up with 200,000 votes, and find me a bunch of those pre-canceled envelopes that we can put ballots in. We've already seen videos of people filling out ballots, okay, from 2020 at least. We all know this is crooked. Granted, I will give you this. There hasn't been an election in the United States or anywhere in the world, in the history of the world that ever, where there's been an election that's been 100% perfectly clean. Right? Okay, I'm just going to give you that. There's been mistakes made. There's been ballots lost. We could go back to 2000 and the hanging chads. Remember that? Okay. We are still human beings. There are still mistakes that are made. Nothing's ever been pristine. But this is why you have the lawyers, the thousands of lawyers being hired by each party. This will get litigated over and over and over and over, and we may be just like 2000, where it's December before we know who won the election. I still remember sitting in my office every day, looking, waiting to see what the news was going to come. I was working as a broker at the time, and whenever that decision was made, it was going to make a big difference in which direction the market went. Okay, it was kind of important to me, to my clients, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing's going to happen here. The market's kind of priced in a Trump win at this point. It's what they figure is going to happen. Remember, the market is always trading on future earnings, prospects, whatever. The whole deal is, do not wait. Do not go, gee, as long as I've got my ballot mailed by November 5th, I'm okay. Do not wait till the last day to go vote. If you take a look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., the people are fleeing. I mean, the citizens, they're getting out of Washington, D.C. already, or making plans to be outside the city as the district on election day because they know it's going to be crazy. The same thing I've said over and over and over again. Vote early, get your vote in, stay home, avoid the craziness. Do not get out there and mess around with it. When you're seeing the people in Washington, D.C. doing it, that should be a tip that we're probably right thinking what we think. But don't count on your mail carrier to get your ballot there in time. Don't count on being able to walk into the polls and vote on November 5th. Get it done now. People are already telling me, posting online, they waited an hour, they waited 2-3 hours to vote. I'd rather do that now than be waiting on November 5th and then go, We have a judge's ruling that we can hold the polls open for 1 more hour because of the lines. And you're an hour and a half back in line.